watching the Flying Monkey Podcast.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Flying Monkey Podcast. I'm your host, Tommy, and today we have Jenny. She's from South Carolina, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her story and experiences with the infamous family court system. How you doing today, Jenny?
Great. How are you?
Good. Good. I'm doing all right. I'm on the other side of the country. I'm out on the West Coast, so it's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank
So
you.
I guess we just start at the beginning. You want to tell us just a little bit about maybe when your family court case started?
Yeah. I've been dealing with family court, I guess you could say. I have two older kids, 28, 26. So divorced from their dad. So I dealt with it then. Only just I dealt with it then, only at a different level. I had an attorney at that time. So I didn't get as involved. I didn't know as much, but I dealt with it then. So then I have another child. She's almost 12 years old. We got divorced in 2017. That's when it began. Um, that's when it really began. At the time, I had an attorney, and um, after the divorce, I'll say we got through that as looking back, as wrong as it was, things that were handled and how it went. But then my daughter from day one was just like, you know, I want to be with you more, mom, because we had, split custody.
Mm.
And so when she was at his house, she didn't want to be there. And so she went on about that for a couple years. And I was just in my head thinking, what can I do? How can I make this better for her? How can I change things? Because I didn't have the money to get an attorney, to pay a high price attorney, or an attorney at all. So I'm thinking, well, I can't do anything. But then, and I don't know where it came from, I was just like, okay, fine, I'm doing it myself. I'm going into it myself with no attorney. And so I did a modification of custody case trying to change the custody so she was with him less and me more, only because that's what she wanted and that was what was best for her. So that's where the past 5 years has been nothing but all of that. So I've dealt
Wow.
with the family court a lot, attorneys a lot, all through the years, and am dealing with it now.
Wow. So are
It's
you,
my
are
life.
you, it's your life. Yeah. No, it's very hard to go through. It's
Yeah, it is.
sometimes it's actually paralyzing
It
when
is.
they pull the shenanigans that they pull on people. Are you
Yes.
able to see your daughter now?
Oh yeah. Yes. The modification of custody, that whole thing lasted about 2 or 3 years. Probably 3 years more. And then we had a 5 day trial, and at the trial, at the end, the order was he got full custody, and I got visitation. I got every other weekend, and 1 week on, 1 week off during the summer. And I don't know how that happened. I have no. I mean, I don't. I still to this day it baffles me as to how that could happen. But that's what happened. So yes, I do. I see her 1 week in the summer. He gets her. It's 1 week on, 1 week off, and then every other weekend, holidays, whatever. That's not enough. That's about 10% of the time. Um, that's just not. That's just not good enough.
Yeah. Does your state have a 50-50 custody law or no?
No, no. They.
They
I
don't.
can say they do whatever they want, basically.
Okay.
And
All
I'm
right.
sorry, but that is really how I feel.
Yeah. No,
There is no
I
law
understand.
that is 50-50. There is no law. It's up to the judges, whatever they think is in the best interest of the child.
Okay. And another question I was thinking about when you were talking about how you went for custody modification and then you ended up with the situation you have now every other weekend and then summers every other week. Um, what was your custody arrangement prior to the modification?
We ended up with 60-40, him having 60, me having 40.
So
I didn't.
it got worse.
It got worse. It got way worse. Yeah. I mean, I had her 40% of the time. which still that wasn't enough, which was why I was doing the modification. 40% of the time is what I had her. And then, yeah, we went down to about 10%.
Yeah, that's insane. That
Yeah.
that is not in the best interest of the child.
No, because I'm the attachment parent. She's my shadow,
Yeah.
and then you take that out of her, you take me out of her life. What is that doing to her?
We were talking before about some of the changes that we all as parents going through this, and actually anyone who doesn't even have kids should be aware of this, or people who just want the best for children and society. So we need to make some changes um, to what's been going on. And what would be some of your what are your thoughts about what changes could be made in the family court system to make things better?
Um, well, there should be some accountability for attorneys. There should be some accountability for the judges and what they do and the decisions that they make. They're not held accountable. Basically, they can do anything they want, say anything they want. It doesn't matter. They can take your kid away for no reason,
Yeah.
and they get around it, and and they do things. I'm going to say, in my experience with dealing with my ex's attorney, um, he did a lot of things that were not ethical, that were not fair. And I know people say, well, if you're going to get a good attorney, get one that's just going to be cutthroat and do anything and everything they can to get you what you want. Well, that's not how it should be. You got to follow. They have to follow laws. They have to be ethical. I mean, they're in the family court system and representing our judicial system, and they can't just do what they want. Um, he broke the laws. I tried to report him to the bar association. The bar association comes back to me and says, though they didn't see where he actually did anything wrong. And I said, why? Because the law is black and white. Read it, it's black and white. But then there comes all these gray areas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what are the gray areas? And he's like, well, you can't know unless you're an attorney. And I said, well, how fair is that? Why are you going to let somebody go into court and represent themselves, but then you're not going to give them all the information? And I said, that is not fair at all. Anyway, the gray areas, that's what protects them. That's what allows them to do whatever they want to do. They have make up these gray areas. But the law is black and white. You break the law, here you go. Here it is. You did it. You broke it. How are you going to come up with a gray area to get them out of what they did? So it's just not fair. And the same goes with the judges, I believe. I mean, there are rules and what are they called? There are rules. I'm trying to think of the
Protocol.
word. I'm sorry.
Protocols.
Well, sort of, yes, but it's a different word that it's called, that the judges, because I mean, I've read all through those. It's just, with the, sometimes I can't think of words and stuff. And it's what all this court stuff has done to me. But, judges have, like, say, protocol rules that they're supposed to go by, but they don't. I mean, things just happen that should not be able to happen. And then when they do, who do you go to? How do you rectify that situation? This is your life. This is your child's life. And you just have to live with it.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. The more people I talk to, it's just always the same story over and over again. And there's just all kinds of just, abuses, and they drag it out, and people get devastated and hurt, and it causes so many more problems than are necessary. And they're public servants. They're supposed to work for the
For
people
the people.
and for the law and under the Constitution. And it just seems that they
They don't.
I mean, most of the time, not every time. There's a few good ones out there that do what's
I
right,
agree.
but it seems to be very, very few and far between.
I agree. And, that's another thing that I want to bring up. These attorneys, and when you have an attorney on one side, an attorney on the other side. I mean, they're all jovial and they're talking. They know what's going on in this whole system. Someone coming in from the outside as a pro se litigant, you don't know what this little secret system they have going on is, but they know, and they do things that that just totally affect your whole entire case. It affects your whole entire life. It affects your child's life, and then you just can't hold them accountable for that. And it just shouldn't be allowed to happen. They shouldn't be allowed to do that sort of stuff.
Are you a victim of parental alienation? HopeInDarkness.me introduces a House on Fire Academy, the only online training program to help you rescue your kids. Become certified in the application of science-based court rescue skills. The program includes classes, courts rehearsals, proficiency reviews, inarguable evidence collection, motion development proficiency tests, and certificates. Sign up today and start the journey to getting your kids back.
It seems that they it's their game and they play by their rules, and
Right.
those are not those are not the rules that were set aside by the Constitution and the intention of it. And it just seems to be, a money-making
Right.
destruction of family. I mean,
It
making
is.
money off the family and just destroying the family. It makes
Right.
everything worse. I mean, people come to the court because they have a conflict in a situation, and their job is to resolve that and to say, okay, kids, you're being bad, you're not being bad, or you're both being bad. And they always blame two people. And it's like, it's not necessarily always the case. Someone's just like, I can't take this anymore. I'm not being allowed to see my child, or this is happening. So we need to dissolve it and change it. And what needs to be done is they're supposed to protect the children and do what's
Right.
right. And in the
Right.
guise of protecting children, they turn around and actually abuse the children and
Yeah.
whoever they decide to go against. It's like they have to pick a winner, and it doesn't need to be a winner. It's like, this is the law, this is right, and this is wrong. So you're going to go 50-50. And that would be, I mean, there's always these arguments about 50-50, but you're 50-50 is about time, not about dividing the child. It's about the time
Right.
spent with the child. I've even heard people say 100% and 100%. That's your parental right. And that's true. And it's true. So why can't folks just in the court system just do what's right? And when you just, it's like in school when kids are screwing around, you say, okay, Johnny or Melissa, you can't do this, and they have to straighten up and follow the rules and do what's right. And so when someone steps out of line, there's your person that's got the issues. So there's the person that needs to be, brought back into line and dealt with in whatever matters necessary. Sometimes it has to be harsh, sometimes it doesn't, but it's about the kids. And if the kid has both parents, I mean, it takes two to create a kid. It takes two to raise a kid. And that's so, so important. And they're basically just messing up these kids by not allowing them to have their parents in their life.
Right. Totally. And I went into this thing thinking, if I just give the details, they'll see what's going on and they will, certainly understand things will go my way because here it is. And to me, it made total sense that, these things that were going on over there at his house shouldn't be going on. And that was not in the best interest of the child, but it didn't happen that way at all. It was as though they would speak of the best interest of the child, but it was not about the child at all. And
Exactly.
it was as though when I went in that it was planned from the beginning, that this was all how they planned it to go. And I guess it goes back to the attorney, where the attorney behind the scenes can manipulate, the judge that we get. And, I have to say, it totally appeared to me that there was ex parte communication. In the temporary hearing, as well as in the final hearing. You know, I can't go and talk to a judge about the case, and that's not fair. But somehow it appeared as that the attorney and the judge had somehow communicated about this. You know, how are you supposed to know about that? That's not fair. The temporary hearing that we had, and they always say the temporary hearing is very important because it kind of lays the groundwork for the rest of how the rest of things are going to go. And,
Yeah.
you know, if you win in the temporary hearing, you're more likely to win in the final hearings, sort of, so to speak. But in a temporary hearing, and I don't know if this is the way it is in every state, but in our state, it's affidavit only. So when you go in there, he has affidavits, I have affidavits, the judge reads the affidavits, and that's what she goes off of.
Wow.
Well, yeah, guess what? You're not supposed to lie in court either. That's called perjury, and it's against the law. Okay? But when I went into my temporary hearing, I mean, I gave all my affidavits with all my true information, thinking certainly they're going to see, you know, what I have to say, and they're going to understand, and it's going to go well. But I had not read his affidavits, because you don't exchange affidavits. You go in court with affidavits. You know, the judge gets them and reads them at that time, I guess, or before. And if I had, knowing now what I didn't know then, you know, if I went into another one, I would sit there and say, hold on, I have to read these affidavits first. But I didn't. There's no time, really. The judge is asking you to speak. You don't have time to sit and read all his affidavits and what are said. I mean, the judge sat there and just chastised me for all this stuff. I had no clue what she was talking about.
Yeah. Things you've never done.
Things I've never done.
So that's where it falls in false allegations. That's a big thing that happens in these situations too.
Right.
It's like
And
there
how
was
do you,
no problem before, and all of a sudden, now that you're in the courtroom, all of a sudden there's all these things that apparently happened and you did that you didn't do, and there's no proof of it whatsoever. But yet
no,
they take it, you know, and they won't
right.
let you say things that they say hearsay, but then they create hearsay themselves, and that's
And that's, you don't even get to respond to it. You know, the judge would not even let me ask, what are you talking about? You know, she wouldn't let me speak. She based it on what was in that affidavit, which was lies. And then it was lies about the school and me going to the school and pitching a fit. And all. I didn't do that, you know. And then so she took she told me I couldn't go back to the school. I could not go back to my child's school, which was absolutely ridiculous.
yeah.
You know, my child was young then. I mean, like first and second grade, they want you to walk them to class like on the first and second day. They want you to come and eat lunch with them at school like once a month. You know, once she got to third grade and above, she was like, you know, mom, she didn't want to be seen with mom. She's like, you know, I would never be able to walk her to class in third grade or beyond, or certainly go to lunch with her. But those are the things that I missed out on because of him, because the judge, because it was an affidavit only, because it was lies, because I couldn't defend myself. And you can't appeal a temporary hearing. So I didn't have a whole lot of options except to wait it out. But I had to prove that he lied, which I did. I proved that he lied. But somehow that information, she didn't want to hear it. It kind of got moved out of the way. You know, I
Yeah.
come in with a deposition by written questions, which I did. This was during COVID. I did a deposition by written questions to get to make sure that I proved that he lied, and they just ignored it. They just ignored it, and then even further, I paid for a $3,000 transcript to appeal it after the fact. And then when I read the transcript, I see how the judge and the attorney were communicating to get that deposition out of evidence. They're like something to the effect of, we're going to move that out over here and not admit it to evidence until blah, 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 whatever they said. But I thought when I read that, they're just getting that out of the way so they don't have to deal with it, because that's holding them accountable for, he lied, I proved it, and they just don't want to deal with that. They're just, because they're not gonna, they already have it planned out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
It's
just ridiculous.
amazing. It's
Not fair.
it's the same thing over and over. It's like they have a blueprint and the directions and the ingredients to make this cake, and this is how they're going to do it. And it's over and over again with every story I hear. So, what would you think would be a great change that could be done to make things better?
I mean, what can we do? Um,
Well, if you could, if you could if you could give me one or two things that need to change, or even a new idea that would spark someone else to say, hey, that's great, and this is what needs to be done in order
right.
to protect children and keep from destroying people and families.
Well, somebody has to hold the judges and the attorneys accountable, and everybody's protecting everybody else, within that system. I mean, they're all protected. There's complete immunity for the judges. Somebody they have to be held accountable. I mean, they can't just do whatever they want to do. And then when it's all said and done with, you've destroyed this whole entire family. You've destroyed this child's life or children's lives. And then what? We have to sit back and just, that's it. We have to live that. That's the rest of our life. You've just determined the rest of our life. You've ruined it. And what can we do? Well, I mean, that's what we have to figure out. How can we hold them accountable? How can we keep them from ruining our lives, our children's lives? Right now, my daughter is, because of the way the custody reads, and he's got complete custody. My daughter it's as though she is in jail. I mean, literally, they put her in jail. And that's the way she feels, and that's the way I feel, and it's not right. Why is she in jail? She didn't do anything. She did nothing wrong, but she suffers
Yep.
tremendously. They took her phone away. Why? What for? Why? I mean, how can you do that? But what can I do? Somehow they have to be held accountable. If things like this, if there's wrongs that are this way, and it's as though you're putting kids in jail, or doing something wrong, like taking their phones away, which is ludicrous, then how do you stop that? How do you change that? Who do you go to? I mean, because it's just too hard of a system to navigate, all the way up to change it. And by that time, they're grown and the damage is done.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I mean, it takes so long to get through it. So yeah, taking away immunity would be a good step to do, the first thing. And then I think simplifying things. If there's an issue, there's always he said, she said. So you just need to eliminate that and say, these are the rules. This is the way it's going to go. You guys give us, have just, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a judge. Maybe we just get rid of the judges in family courts. I mean, because what's the point? I mean, I was hearing about, I think Georgia has an online divorce that seemed to be working really well. And when they did that, it dropped all the false allegations by a huge
Well,
percentage. So
that makes
all those things just disappeared when he said, okay, this is the stuff. You have to do this. You have to make a decision. You have to divide the property. You have to set up a schedule. And then when you get the ones that are refusing to do that, you're dealing with some
yeah.
difficult people, and you just set the rules down. Put your foot down, say this is the way it's going to be. And if you don't follow it, then you're
Well,
going to
that
have to
goes
deal
back
with.
to the gray areas. They
Yep.
they should not be allowed to just make up these gray areas that kind of smooth them over in the incident that the law is broken somewhat. I mean, you can't just make up all these gray areas that make it okay for you to do whatever you're going to do. And then when people try to read this attorney lingo, is what I guess they say, I can't read this whole paperwork because it's all written by an attorney and I don't understand it, blah blah blah. Well, the reason that is I think they want you to not understand it, because that gives them more power to have the gray areas so that they can do what they want.
As a pro se litigant, the judge is supposed to help you through it. This
Oh,
judge is
no, no,
supposed to
no.
explain, but they don't.
That supposedly affects your credibility with them if you are stumbling somewhat. they're not going to help you. They're just going to, you know, it's just going to affect your credibility. But it starts with the attorneys, I think. And the attorneys, what they do is I did not go into this modification to create a war. That is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to make my child's life a better life. I wanted for it to be better for her. But when I sent that paperwork to his attorney, what he sent me back, he made all kinds of just insane allegations about me that I'm thinking, I don't do anything. I don't go out of the house. I work in my yard. I do my job. I don't party. I don't do anything like that. So how are you going to say I did all these things? How are you going to prove them? I mean, to look at it first, I'm looking at it and I get scared because they're recommending supervised visitation, and it scares you at first, but then you go back and you think about it and you're like, that's what it is. It's a scare tactic. And that began the war. And I didn't want it to be a war, but they make it a war.
Yeah.
They make it so that you're out for blood. And that's how they make it. And so two parents that are not necessarily at war, they just want different things. The attorneys make it a war. And then that creates so many other problems. I mean, you're sitting there and that's where false allegations come in, and this comes in and that comes in, that you're defending yourself, and it's your whole entire life. You're trying to defend yourself from what they're saying about you because they're creating the war. It does not have to be a war.
Exactly. It's funny how they said the judges and the lawyers, I hear a lot say, oh, these parents are high conflict. And it's like, you just used, the manipulation of words. I mean, in all these different places in the world these days is insane. It's like all gaslighting, and they're the ones that created the conflict. We don't really have a conflict. We've just got an issue here that we need to resolve, and, let's do what's right and what's best for the child. It's real easy. It's, black and white. And if anyone doesn't want to follow the rules, then you have to deal with the consequences. And there can be different levels of it. So first strike, second strike, third strike, you're out. That's fine, because it's, going to get away with a little bit, but not for long. And they just need to act on that and just keep it within that realm. And everything would be so simple, and the children would be great. And by destroying these kids and abusing them the way they do, whether they know they're doing it or not, if they're just following orders from above, or who knows what it is, but they're just destroying kids and abusing them. And all they're doing that's just hurting society as a whole, because then they're beginning to have all these issues and all these problems, and they're just going to end up doing the same thing and ending up in the same place. And it's just going to go over and over and over again. We've been watching it for like 50 or 60 years. So, and it just keeps getting worse. So something needs to change.
Exactly. My child could do great things, but when you put all this in her life and you put her in this jail, so to speak, and you make her deal with all this horrible stuff, I mean,
she's not allowed to. Yeah.
How
it hinders
can she do great things? I mean, she's trying to do great things, but you're trying to stop her, and it just makes no sense. You're stopping her, and they don't protect the kids. They do not protect the kids at all. I mean, I'm fighting to protect my child, and they let her dad basically do whatever he wants. They let and have her, and she's like in this jail, and I'm trying to protect her, and nobody will listen. Nobody will listen. I'll file motion after motion after motion, and nobody listens. Nobody does anything. If it's I asked this question yesterday when I was in family court. I took a motion down there because she's got medical issues that have not been treated. They've been prolonged because he did not give her medical attention. I gave her medical attention. I didn't want to send her back. I ultimately had to. But I said, well, it's an emergency motion. I said, and they said the judges are in a conference. I said, well, what do you do when there's an emergency? What do you do? I mean, they're like, well, we'll send it over. I'm sorry?
What was their response?
They said, well, we'll scan it and email it over. And if they look at it they'll determine if it's an emergency. If they look at it, they may or may not look at it.
Yeah.
Like, but what it, okay, she may have pneumonia. She may not be dying this instant. But what if somebody was? Then what would you do?
No, exactly. Yeah.
Scan it and email it over and hope that they look at it?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Makes no sense.
All right, Jenny. Well, our time's up for today. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your story with us.
You're welcome.
And I hope things work out for you. And it was a pleasure
Thank
talking
you.
to you. You have a wonderful weekend, and hopefully we'll talk again to you soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
All righty.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for watching the Flying Monkey podcast. Like, follow, and subscribe to our social media sites on Facebook, X, YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, and Truth Social. You can also go straight to our webpage at www.flyingmonkeypodcast.com.